Hey everyone, George Soto here. Hope all is well. I'm joined today by my really good friend, Jon Ferrara. Ferrara.
So
I'll cut in again.
that's okay. Can you say Ferrari?
Ferrari.
Say Ferrara.
Ferrara.
Yeah.
Ferrara.
Or
Okay.
it's Giovanni Vincenzo Ferrara.
Awesome. How you doing? How's
I'm doing,
everything?
I'm doing great, George. And I've always called you Jorge. Is it Jorge or George?
It's actually technically Jorge. So for everyone out there, because people ask me this every day,
Yeah.
and not too many people, a couple of people. And it's technically Jorge. Actually, my full name is Jorge Luis Soto Aranas is my grandfather and my mother's name. So that's why I've added it to the lower third. And I'm trying to change my online profiles and adding that just in memory and in homage of my grandfather, Antonio Aranas, who was a Spanish fella whose grandparents moved to the Philippines. And so he was born and raised in the Philippines. And anyways, he's my mother's father, great entrepreneur. He was one of the, you know what he was? He was actually one of the pioneers of the ceramic outsourcing business in the Philippines. So if
Wow.
you were getting that stuff produced and then shipped out, outsourced in the 70s or 60s, 70s, something like that, he was, in that ecosystem and one of the pioneers of that. But
Jorge, I really believe that the people that come before us paved the way for our life and our success. And I think that we owe it to them to understand that history, to research and to keep that history and to tell those stories, because I think it's through those stories that get told that build the foundation of future success, right? And so you and I share many things, including Latin ancestry. My father is from Sicily. Your father is Spanish. And they immigrated to new lands. Your grandfather, I think you said, to the Philippines.
yeah,
My father to America, and they built great things. And it is because of those people and those things that we are who we are today. And we need to pass that down to our generations, but not only our generations, but to people around us, right? Because I think that we're on this planet to grow our souls by helping other people grow theirs. And that's it. Rinse and repeat. They're not going to write on my gravestone, invented CRM, made money, blah, blah, blah. They're going to say beloved friend, father, husband, right? And so your job on this planet is to be present with people around you, learn as much as you can about them, find ways to add value, even if it's simply just gifting them with your presence and a smile. Because so many cases, we're all so friggin' distracted with this that we just don't pay attention to each other anymore, and we need to do more of that.
I completely agree. We were prepping a little bit, sort of catching up. We've been friends for a long time, and the real, I think, takeaway from our prep call before this podcast was really this awareness that I see across the board around the need to be more conscious, spiritual, that kind of thing. I mean, you're seeing it all over the place, and I think it's a beautiful thing. I mean, look, the path to enlightenment is not whatever you believe that to be. It's not an easy one, right? And so
No.
I know a lot of people are, bummed out and scared and frustrated and about life and society right now. I get it.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, diamonds, they always use that analogy of the diamonds, right? The diamonds are this, this thing that happens after this tremendous chaos, right?
Right.
So,
Pressure, baby, pressure.
absolutely. Well, speaking of pressure, this whole podcast is really about the pivot story. And I want to give a quick intro on you, Jon, because you're really, the godfather of CRM, with Goldmine and everything that you've been doing. We were chatting about that earlier since, before Benioff, before, shout out to him. I know, Mark well, and, but you've been around for a while. Why don't you kind of give folks a quick background on yourself, the early days, and maybe a quick, abbreviated statement around like where we're at right now.
Okay. Well, first, Jorge, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share some storytelling with you, because I think that what you and I are doing right now by sharing our stories inspires and enlightens and ideally pushes wind in other people's sails who are listening. I got involved in relationship management because my dad was a people person, and he used to talk to everybody, and he used to embarrass the crap out of me. And I wish, and I just said, Dad, stop that. And then he was an entrepreneur himself. He had the #1 Lincoln Mercury guy back in the 50s. And then in the 70s, he had the first Subaru dealership in Southern California. And he went through struggles in life. And I watched him pivot through many different of those struggles, but I never wanted to be in sales. So I studied computer science and basically worked for a few people until I started my own business, because I struggled as a salesperson to manage my relationships. And there was no Outlook. There was no term CRM. There was no tool that integrated email, contact, and calendar, and sales and market automation. There was a collection of products out there. One that did telemarketing, which was a recall date and notes on calls, called Telemagic. Another thing called Act was a plug-in to Symphony that allowed you to manage tasks and activities against contacts, but nothing that integrated contacts with email, calendar, and pipeline and market automation. And not just for salespeople, but for everybody in the company, because I believe it's not just salespeople that touch the constituency around your company. Everybody in your company is part of that community that touches everybody outside your company. So what every company needs is a team relationship manager, not a CRM, but a relationship platform that everybody can collaborate and communicate about the people that they're connecting to grow the business. And that's what Goldmine was at its heart, was a relationship manager. And I think relationships help build businesses. Started that company on $5,000, never took a dime of venture, grew it to about $100 million in revenue, sold it when I was 40, retired, raised 3 babies, which is probably the biggest blessing I've ever gotten in my life, because you can grow so much by being present with people who love you, because they'll reflect your shit back at you. And if you're willing to work on your shit, if you're willing to look at your shit and work on it, you can grow as a human being, which is why I think we're on this planet, which I said earlier. And so basically that 10 years of growth period set me up for my next journey, which was Nimble. And I started Nimble because I started to use social media, and I saw I was going to change the way that we work, play, buy, and sell. And I looked around for a relationship manager that integrated contacts and social. I couldn't find it. I found Hootsuite, which linked conversations to in streams, but didn't tie the conversations to people. I found Google Contacts, which basically was a tab for contacts, which was separate than email and calendar. And so that basically was contact management, but it wasn't tied to social, and it was broken, because if you go to a contact record, you need the history of interactions that you and the team have had on email, calendar, and social, and it didn't exist. And you need a team contact database that everybody can share, which Google Contacts wasn't. Then I looked at CRM, saw it wasn't about relationships. It was about reporting. And basically the reason they called Salesforce, you have to force salespeople to use it. Nobody in their right mind would use a CRM if they weren't beat on to do it. And that's why there's 225 million global businesses, less than 1% use any CRM. And so I felt a calling, like when Mick Jagger or Keith Richards first hits that chord of Angie and they feel something in their bones. I felt something. I put a team together, and I basically pioneered social CRM and social selling before the terms were even existing.
I remember.
And basically in 2010, really reimagined CRM as the way that we know it, and had tremendous early success and growth, because LinkedIn gave me all their public and private APIs, which means I built this system that was friggin' amazing. And then shit happened, right? LinkedIn wanted to build Sales Navigator. They offered to buy Nimble, but not for enough money. Facebook cut off the APIs because they want you to go to Facebook to consume their advertising. And this thing that I built didn't have its core anymore, which was the unification of email, contact, and calendar, and Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn in this magical relationship manager. So I had to go walk through the desert. I had to rethink who I was and what we meant to people. And that was my pivot time.
You know, well, first of all, thanks for the background. I remember that. I remember I was actually doing an incubator. I was applying. This was late 2010. I was applying to AngelPad, which was an incubator in San Francisco. And I remember getting in for a company. I don't know if you remember, but I was doing this thing called FeedGen. And I remember it was basically like Outreach.io and SalesLoft and all these tools now, plugging in straight to Salesforce, being your lead management, system, etc. And I
Yeah.
remember looking at, and I thought about social, but we weren't really, it wasn't at the core of what we were thinking about. We were thinking about more just like, creating a workflow that was for the inside sales rep.
You're thinking about SDR automation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then I remember someone coming up to me who worked at Google, like one of their B2B enterprise executives, and he said, "Hey, do you know Nimble?" And that was at the end of 2010, maybe beginning of 2011, when we actually got in there. And I remember looking at it and going, man, these guys, they figured it out. Like, they're going to do it. And to your credit, like, it's, you were I think you're still the only one who's really got it. So you understand what that user experience should be. But let's talk a little bit about the pivot. Like, first of all, what is a pivot? And tell us a little bit, I know it's a longer story with more context, but what's a pivot? Tell us a little bit about, a pivot you've gone through, and what tips would you give founders around knowing this is the time to pivot? How do I go through the pivot emotionally, strategically, spiritually, and then get over the hump? What is it like to be on the other side?
So this pivot that I did is not dissimilar to a pivot that I did in the gold mine era. And I'm going to tell you that story in order to tell you the story of the pivot with Nimble. So when I first started Goldmine, the backend database was DBase, the email transport was IMAP and POP, and the operating system was Novell. Because Microsoft didn't have an operating system for networks. They didn't have NT Server. But they came out with, and Microsoft doesn't innovate, they iterate. They wait for somebody else to build the market, and then they come in when it's big enough, and they use their muscle, which is billions of users and hundreds of thousands of ours. And they hired my former boss at Bannon, and he built NT Server, SQL Server, and Exchange Server, and they ate Novell. At the same time, my customers were asking me for a more scalable backend database like SQL, a more secure email transport like Exchange, and a more secure operating system like NT Server. And my partners, my resellers, I had a channel back there of 10,000 resellers. They were asking for more revenue on products and services for every Goldmine sale. And so what I did is I built Goldmine Enterprise, which required NT Server, SQL Server, and Exchange Server for every seat of Goldmine. Solving my customers need to scale, my partners need to make product and services revenue, but more importantly, Microsoft's need to sell their first-party solutions, because nobody would buy SQL Server without a front-end application that required it. And so we basically grew from this small company to $100 million in revenue by becoming strategic to Microsoft by being the third-party solution that drove their first-party products. And so we started out with Novell, and we shifted to Microsoft as our sort of focus business partner. Fast forward to Nimble. When I started Nimble, there was no cloud productivity solution from Microsoft. It was on-prem Exchange and Outlook. And it was G Suite. G Suite was the Novell of its era. If you think about it, if you have PCs and you want to tie them together, you use Gmail G Suite, and that's your email, contact, calendar, and cloud productivity tools. Office 365 didn't exist. But about the same time that these APIs were cut off for LinkedIn and Facebook, I started to rethink, what's the core signals that all business people live on? It really is email, calendar, and contacts. That's the operating system of every business. Social is a new way of communication, but ultimately it ties back to conversations and people. Social is just another channel. And so I said to myself, nobody can ever take away the APIs for email, contact, and calendar, and Office 365 just came out. And I know that I pivoted from Novell to Microsoft back in the day. I saw the opportunity to expand into Office 365 in the same way that we did with Novell to Microsoft. And so we basically did these integrations to the products, built relationships with the people, and got access to programs that evolved into us becoming the simple CRM for Office 365 and G Suite. And Microsoft signed in a reseller agreement globally with Nimble, where they resell Nimble with Office 365 through all of their business partners. They are walking us into their distributors and telling the distributors that Nimble is strategic to them, where basically they're paying their distributors to market Nimble through their resellers to their end users. We've signed up over 30 of their top 50 global distributors, over 1,000 resellers, and basically are now leveraging Microsoft as our key business partner. So we are a third-party product that drives first-party adoption, not just Office 365, but also of Power BI, Flow, Power Apps, Azure, and Dynamics, because those are the crown jewels of Microsoft. Today, there's 175 million Office 365 customers. There's 7 million G Suite customers. So it's really game over in regards to cloud productivity. But really, the money that Microsoft is going to make is in Azure, and it's going to be in Dynamics.
And that's so, their AWS type product, right?
Yes, yes. Most people aren't really aware of Azure. They think it's a color, or they think it's AWS. But think about this. 5-10 years ago, most businesses said, I'm never moving my Exchange server out of the closet. They've already started to dip their toe in the water by putting their Exchange server in the cloud as Exchange. It's just a matter of time before they move the rest of the servers, because every business has either been hacked or will be hacked, and they can't afford the IT people to manage all the servers and patches and updates. So people are going to be putting their servers into the cloud. And if you're already drinking the Microsoft Kool-Aid because you're already buying through hundreds of thousands of Microsoft VARs, they're going to end up putting them in Azure. And the company that can become strategic to drive adoption of Azure and Dynamics and the other crown jewels of Microsoft will be the next gold mine. And that's exactly where we are today. And so we had to pivot from being a find, try, buy Google Apps ISV partner to a partner that has become the simple serum for Office, where we are now building a channel. And if you think about it, Jorge, most SaaS companies don't know who Microsoft is, and they don't know what a channel is. They're spending millions a year on AdWords. They're driving eyeballs into SDRs, and they're trying to close as much business as they can. You can get to $5 to $20 million to $30 million a year in revenue as a SaaS company doing that. But if you want to get to 100, 200, $300 million in revenue a year, you need to get people selling for you 24 hours a day around the globe. And that's what these resellers are, the trusted advisors of billions of businesses. And we are now scaling Nimble by leveraging them. And that's our pivot.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So it's really interesting because we think a lot about scalability and efficiency around customer acquisition, et cetera, all the time as sales and revenue leaders. And the channel is really something that I've never seen done at a startup that I've been part of, right? Like,
yeah.
You know, Twitter, I don't even think Twitter, when I was at Twitter, really had it done or had it figured out. But, you know, when properly actually executed, the channel is really, I think, one of the best, if not the best distribution strategy.
Well, think about it, Jorge. Every single Microsoft reseller has hundreds, if not thousands, of customers that they are serving, right? And each of those customers are between 5 to 50 seat type of opportunities. At Nimble, our average seat is 3 to 10. But imagine we get into this Microsoft thing, all of a sudden it's 5 to 50.
Yeah.
You can just think about the numbers that sort of exponentially grows
Absolutely.
to. And the other secret is this. Most Microsoft resellers sell plumbing to plumbers. They sell IT infrastructure to IT decision makers. They don't sell solutions on top to those decision makers, and they don't use modern sales and social sales and marketing tools themselves. And so Nimble is a simple serum for Office to digitally transform Microsoft resellers into using modern social sales and marketing solutions, who then can start having conversations with their customers about modern social sales and marketing solutions, which paves a way for them to then upsell them into the rest of Microsoft's crown jewels. Because if those resellers can't sell solutions on top of the plumbing that they're selling, they can never sell the rest of Microsoft's crown jewels. And so if you think about, Goldmine was the training wheels for Salesforce and Dynamics back in the day, and Nimble is evolving into the training wheels for Azure and Dynamics. So we're actually working with the Dynamics team to basically joint sell into Microsoft resellers Nimble to basically get them ready and prepared to sell Dynamics. And in the Dynamics situation, Nimble is actually a sales enablement add-on to Dynamics, because if you think about it, when you buy a CRM, you also need to buy sales intelligence software so you can enrich people and company leads with people and company data. Then you need a sales enablement outreach tool like email tracking and templating. And each of these tools costs extra money and they don't talk to each other. So if you go out and buy Salesforce and Outreach.io and Sales Navigator or Inside Sales or Raintree Discover Org, all these things are separate tools. Nimble is not only a market leader in CRM, but also in sales intelligence and email tracking, sales enablement, which means that we're an adjunct to Dynamics. So Dynamics resellers can either sell Nimble as a simple CRM for Office or as a sales enablement tool that unifies Office with Dynamics, enriches Dynamics contacts, but also lets you prospect net new customers wherever you are in LinkedIn or a Forbes article, and all those contacts go back into Nimble. But here's the best thing. So I have built into Nimble two-way sync with over 170 SaaS business apps, which are most of the apps in the market. And if you think about every business is siloed. They have Office 365 or G Suite, where contacts are separate for every team member. Then they have Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. But more importantly, they have a sales, a marketing, a customer service, and an accounting app. Might be MailChimp, might be QuickBooks, might be Pipedrive, whatever it is. And so today, a business doesn't have a unified relationship platform for the whole company. Nimble will synchronize all those disparate business apps, even if you have a CRM, with your support, your accounting, with your contacts in G Suite or Office, with your social, into a team relationship manager that then goes back and works in any of those applications. So if you're listening to this today, it doesn't matter if you have a CRM. Nimble is your team relationship manager that enables your team to work effectively together. So you could buy Nimble today, even if you are using a separate CRM, or you could start out with Nimble and grow. And as your needs grow and you need more depth and breadth, you could expand into something like Dynamics, and then basically have Nimble continue to add value into that. And that's how we've pivoted to become the simple CRM for Office 365 with Microsoft as our global reseller, and then pushing us globally to their billions of customers.
Awesome. Jon, thank you so much for your time. If folks want to actually follow you on social media or engage with your content, I know you're a thought leader in not only startups, but just and sales, but in just innovation in general. What are some good social handles to follow you on?
Well, you know what? I think your brand and your network are your net worth, and that even if you're not in sales, you should be worried about your brand and your network. So Google yourself today. And you should show up on that first page. And if you don't, start working on that. Google me, Jon Ferrara, Ferrara. You'll find all of my identities, but I'll just make it simple for you. My email is jon@nimble.com. You want to connect with me? Reach out on whatever channel is most effective for you. I'd love to find ways to help you grow. As I said from the beginning, that's why we're on this planet, to grow by helping other people grow. That's why I built Goldmine. That's why I build Nimble. That's why I get up every friggin' day and basically build tools that help people to achieve their passion, plan, and purpose in life, which ultimately is centered on the relationships that you nurture on a daily basis.
Amen. Thank you so much. Well, I hope to see you soon in person, and have a great day. And thanks again for your time.
Thank you, Jorge. And I'm going to leave you with one code. If you're listening to this today and anything I say resonates with you, and you try Nimble and you find that it works good for you and your team, use the code JON40, JON40. When you put your credit card in, it'll save you 40% off your first 3 months.
Awesome. Jon, have a wonderful day. Thanks again.
Thank you, Jorge. Always great to connect with you, my friend.
Likewise.